ballroom shimmered beneath towering crystal chandeliers. Golden light reflected across polished marble floors. Hundreds of distinguished guests filled the hall. Business leaders, government officials, international investors, celebrities. Every table overflowed with elegance. Soft classical music drifted through the room, while waiters moved silently between conversations. It was the annual charity gala hosted by billionaire entrepreneur Alexander Hayes. An evening where influence mattered almost as much as wealth. Near the entrance, photographers waited for one final VIP arrival. Then, the grand doors slowly opened. The music continued, but every conversation stopped. A boy stepped inside. He looked no older than 15. His feet were bare against the polished marble. His faded shirt hung loosely from his thin shoulders. His trousers were stained with dust from the streets. His dark hair was tangled by wind and rain. For a brief moment, the room simply stared. Several guests exchanged puzzled glances. Someone frowned. Another whispered quietly, "Did security make a mistake?" A woman looked toward the guards. "Why is he in here?" Yet something felt unusual. The security officers didn't move. They stood perfectly still, almost respectfully. Then, before anyone could speak again, Alexander Hayes rose from his seat. The billionaire crossed the ballroom himself, not sending an assistant, not asking security. He walked directly toward the homeless boy. The room watched in complete silence. Alexander stopped only inches away. The boy lowered his eyes, perhaps expecting to be asked to leave. Instead, Alexander smiled warmly. He gently placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's good to finally meet you," he said softly. The boy looked up in surprise. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Alexander nodded. "I've been looking for you." Without another word, he led the teenager through the center of the ballroom. Guests instinctively stepped aside. Some watched with confusion, others with disbelief. The photographers abandoned every celebrity in the room. Every camera followed only the boy. Alexander didn't take him toward an empty corner. He didn't hide him behind the crowd. He escorted him to the finest table in the ballroom. The chair beside his own, the seat reserved for the guest of honor. A wave of whispers spread through the hall. Who is he? Is he related to Alexander? Is this some kind of publicity stunt? No one knew, except Alexander. He remained calm, patient, as though he had waited many years for this single evening. The young boy sat carefully, afraid even to touch the expensive chair. His hands trembled. Not because of the crowd, because he had never been inside a place like this before, only yesterday. He had fallen asleep beneath an old bridge on a piece of worn cardboard. Now, he sat beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than anything he had ever imagined. His name was Ethan. He was 15 years old. For nearly 5 years, the streets had been his only home. After losing both parents within a single year, he had quietly disappeared into the city's forgotten corners. No relatives came looking, no foster family arrived. Eventually, people simply stopped noticing him. He slept beneath bridges whenever it rained, inside abandoned buildings during winter, on park benches whenever security guards allowed him a few peaceful hours before sunrise. Every possession he owned fit inside a faded backpack, an old blanket, 2 worn shirts, a photograph of his parents with cracked edges, and a tiny notebook where he wrote every dream he refused to abandon. Life had taught Ethan hardship. It had never taught him bitterness. Each morning he collected discarded bottles to earn enough for a simple meal. If an elderly person struggled to carry groceries, he offered his help. If he found extra bread, he shared it with the stray dogs that followed him through the neighborhood. He never demanded money, never shouted at passing strangers, never blamed anyone for the life he had been given. Most people walked past without making eye contact. Some assumed he was dangerous. Others assumed he was lazy. None of them knew the quiet kindness hidden beneath his worn clothes. And none of them knew the truth about his father. A truth buried beneath 20 years of silence. Back inside the ballroom, the whispers only grew louder. Guests who had spent fortunes to earn invitations suddenly found themselves watching a barefoot teenager receive greater respect than anyone else in the room. Journalists adjusted their cameras. Television crews focused every lens on Ethan. Some of the city's wealthiest people shifted uneasily in their seats. Alexander Hayes remained standing beside the boy. He said nothing. He offered no explanation. He simply waited, as though the silence itself was preparing everyone for a story that would change the meaning of wealth forever. Alexander Hayes slowly stepped onto the stage. The ballroom remained completely silent. Hundreds of eyes followed him. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Cameras pointed toward the podium. The young homeless boy sat quietly at the front table, still unsure why he was there. Alexander looked across the room. Then he took a slow breath. "Tonight," he began softly, "isn't about business. It isn't about success. And it certainly isn't about me." The guests exchanged confused glances. Alexander continued, "Everything I own, every company I built, every achievement people congratulate me for, exists because one ordinary man chose kindness over comfort." The room grew even quieter. Alexander looked toward Ethan. Then his voice carried everyone 20 years into the past. "My father was traveling home one rainy evening. I was only 8 years old. I remember sitting beside him. I remember the rain hitting the windshield. And then, a truck lost control. The ballroom remained motionless. Our car crashed into a roadside barrier. My father was badly injured. He lost a dangerous amount of blood. I was trapped inside the vehicle. I screamed for help. Cars kept passing. Some slowed down. They looked. Then they drove away. People were afraid. Afraid of getting involved. Afraid of losing time. Afraid of becoming someone else's problem." Alexander paused. "I thought my father was going to die. Then, one man came running. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wearing an expensive suit. He was wearing worn work clothes covered with dust. His name was Daniel Carter. He was a construction laborer. He never stopped to ask who we were. He never asked whether we could repay him. He simply ran." Alexander smiled faintly through moist eyes. He broke the damaged door open with his bare hands. He pulled me out first. Then he carried my father across the muddy roadside. He used his own shirt to slow the bleeding. He called an ambulance. And when the ambulance became stuck in traffic, he climbed inside the emergency vehicle and stayed with my father the entire way. Several guests quietly lowered their heads. Alexander continued, "When we reached the hospital, the doctors discovered something even worse. My father's kidneys had already been failing. The accident pushed his body beyond its limits. He needed an emergency transplant. There wasn't enough time." The audience listened without moving. Then Daniel did something no one expected. He volunteered. He wasn't family. He wasn't a friend. He was a complete stranger. He offered one of his own kidneys. The doctors asked him repeatedly if he was certain. He answered the same way every time. "If my kidney can save his life, then take it. I don't need anything in return." Alexander stopped speaking for a moment. His voice almost disappeared. "My father lived because another man gave away a part of himself." A woman near the front quietly wiped away tears. Alexander looked upward for a moment before continuing. "When my father finally recovered, he searched everywhere to thank Daniel properly. But Daniel had already returned to work. He refused every reward. He refused every payment. He refused every gift. He simply smiled and said, 'If you want to thank me, help someone else when it's their turn.'" Alexander looked toward Ethan again. "Before my father passed away years later, he held my hand, and he made me one promise. If you ever find Daniel or anyone from his family, repay his kindness. Never allow his sacrifice to be forgotten." Alexander lowered his head. "I promised him I would, but life moved quickly. I built companies. I traveled the world. I earned more money than I ever imagined. Yet every success reminded me of one unfinished promise. So I started searching. For years, I searched old hospital files. I met retired doctors. I read forgotten newspaper reports. I visited neighborhoods where Daniel once lived. Most people told me they hadn't seen him in years. Some believed he had died. I refused to stop looking. Then, an elderly nurse remembered something. She remembered Daniel had a young son, a little boy. She didn't know where he had gone, but she remembered his name, Ethan. Alexander looked directly at the boy sitting below the stage. I followed every clue. It took months, and when I finally found him, his voice broke. I wasn't prepared. I expected to find a family, a small house, a simple life. Instead, I found a boy sleeping beneath a bridge, using cardboard for a mattress, sharing his dinner with stray dogs, helping elderly strangers carry groceries, smiling, even after life had taken almost everything from him. Alexander wiped a tear from his face. In that moment, I realized something. My father's life, my future, my company's. This entire evening, all of it exists because Ethan's father once stopped for a stranger. He slowly stepped down from the stage. The ballroom remained frozen. Alexander walked toward Ethan. He stopped beside him. Then, without hesitation, he wrapped both arms around the young boy. The applause never came. Not yet. Many people were crying too hard to move. Alexander reached into a leather folder resting on the table. He placed several documents into Ethan's trembling hands. This house is yours. This education fund is yours. This savings account is yours. And when you're ready, my company will help you build whatever future you choose. Ethan looked down at the papers. His hands shook uncontrollably. I don't know what to say. Alexander smiled through tears. You don't have to. This isn't charity. This is a promise finally being kept. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Then one guest stood. Another followed. Then another. Within moments, the entire ballroom rose to its feet. The applause echoed beneath the chandeliers. Not for wealth, not for success, but for gratitude. Alexander turned toward the audience one final time. Wealth is never measured by what we keep. It is measured by what we refuse to forget. Every person in the room understood those words differently than when the evening had begun. The cameras captured one final image, a billionaire standing beside a homeless boy. Neither of them smiling because of money, both of them smiling because kindness had finally come full circle. Some acts of generosity end the moment they are given. Others echo through generations. Daniel Carter never lived to witness this night, but his compassion had built a future he would never see. One man's sacrifice had saved a stranger. 20 years later, that single decision transformed another life, and everyone who left the ballroom carried the same quiet realization. The greatest legacy any person can leave behind is not wealth. It is the kindness that continues long after they are gone.